Michael Binder, Assistant Professor of Political Science, University of North Florida. I teach the intro class and a number of classes in American politics.
With the Supreme Court's recent approval of the wording for the medicinal marijuana on the ballot, what do you think the chances of this legislation getting passed are?
I think they're pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, Florida in general has a very high bar for ballot measures to pass. Instead of most states where it's 50% plus one, Florida's higher. Florida's at 60%. So you're going to need, a good level of support. Now, that being said, generally speaking, medicinal marijuana has a lot of support, upwards of the 80s as far as percent approval in the state of Florida and across the nation. So I think there's a good chance it could get passed.
Do you think that this amendment to the Constitution has actually increased the number of voters, registered voters in Florida?
I don't know about if it's increased the number of registered voters. I certainly think it has the impact of potentially bringing some more people to the polls in November.
Okay.
I've actually done some research on this topic, and competitive ballot initiatives do bring out folks to the polls upwards of 1 to 2 percentage points.
In your opinion, do you think legalizing medicinal marijuana is a good thing in regards to tax dollars and jobs?
I'm not sure about tax dollars. I mean, if you draw the line out that legalizing medicinal marijuana leads to production of marijuana, and therefore that creates jobs, I guess you could make the argument there. I think you'll see a little boost, but the problem is, are we going to grow it here, or are we going to purchase it from other states? States like Colorado have seen a huge uptick in job growth, and because of that, tax dollars, both directly when they legalize recreational, but also on the second half, the folks working and paying taxes. So if we grow it here, sure, you could see a little bit, but unlikely that we'll probably be importing it from other places is my best guess. Not only that, the medicinal market, depending upon how strict it is, and the ballot language is fairly restrictive, this isn't going to be like California's was 15 years ago, where it's you go to your doctor, the doctor says you're depressed, you get some marijuana. It's a little more restrictive than that.
Okay. In regards to universities in the state of Florida, how are they going to have to compensate if the amendment passes?
I don't think they're going to have to compensate much. The language in the ballot measure is very restrictive. You need debilitating diseases, so I don't know that it would impact anybody necessarily on any type of university-wide basis or even typical job-wide basis. Folks in these conditions either A, aren't working, or B, if they are working, they're on some serious pain medication anyway, which tend to be opiate-based. So if there's a drug protocol at their office or at where they work, they're working within that anyway.
Sure. Okay. If the amendment passes, is the state of Florida going to have to decriminalize marijuana to some extent because of the availability of it?
No. They could. That's down the road potentially, but certainly not. Much like any form of a drug that's prescribed by your doctor, if you're in possession of it and it's a narcotic, you can go to jail for that, and you don't need to decriminalize it in the least.
Okay.
That's a different policy question.
Right. Well, with the problems that Florida's had with like the pill banks and all of these doctors just signing off prescriptions, do you foresee that Florida might have a similar problem in regards to that debacle?
It's possible.
Yeah.
I will say this: we are not leading the pill banks anymore. They've cracked down on that pretty substantially,
Yeah.
and we've seen some results. Any time you have a prescription program in place where there's a demand need or a demand want, you run the risk of some type of abuse of that program. We'll see is kind of the story, but you can have that now with anything.
Okay. Last question here. Seeing as how a number of states already have decriminalized marijuana, is it safe to say that it might be time to kind of remove marijuana from the class or the Schedule 1,
Again, you're in a different arena. What the states do is not necessarily at all related to what the federal government wants to do.
Right.
I don't necessarily think that this absolutely spells the death knell for the Class 1 classification. But it's pretty clear that the folks that are currently now making policy decisions, so folks in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, come from a generation where marijuana was viewed very differently than it was, say, 60 years ago. And because of that, we're running the possibility that you could see marijuana, if not completely off the Schedule 1, slightly either removed from that, maybe even fully legalized. Who knows? I think what's really going to be interesting is how this plays out in Washington and Colorado over the next couple of years. I think states are real hesitant to go that route until they see how this plays out. If it plays out successfully, such that nothing changes, I think you'll begin to see more states move in that direction.